Okay, Introduction, Chapter 0.0, Part 5. We're looking at the Virgen of Guadalupe in Guadalupe, Mexico, in a basilica. Now, this is in a church, and we're under the heading of the power and value of art. And this is a very powerful piece. If you're not familiar with it, this has been reproduced in many different ways in many years in various countries. There's an origin story here. I want you to read that in the book. And this is placed in a church, so that's part of its context or meaning. And this is a very meaningful piece of artwork because it speaks to so many people in the New World, meaning North and South America and Mexico, of course. So this has been reproduced quite a lot. And it's a sacred piece of the Virgin. And I want you to read the origin story. We also go into censorship and we look at Ai Weiwei. Now, Ai Weiwei is right now the most important contemporary artist in the world. He is Chinese. He lives in China most of the time. He is an activist, and he is an amazingly brilliant artist. He's worked in many different ways. He worked on the beautiful bird's nest piece at the 2008 Olympics. He's done a lot of different things, but he's also come under, let me see, do we have an image of it? Oh, this is our close-up. He's also come under house arrest for his activism, and he's out of the country some of the time. Sometimes he cannot leave. And in this particular case, this piece that he shows at the Venice Biennale is 6 different chambers, miniaturized cells that he was, or the same cell, but different activities done in each one, where he was under captivity. He was beaten and tortured while he was in captivity, and they destroyed his art studio. But Ai Weiwei, partly because of his level of exposure, but mainly because of his level of dedication to activism, continues to stir the pot in China, which is very difficult and very dangerous, and is an activist worldwide. Right now, he's working on some things about immigration, and he's working on the Syrian. Some photographs in Syria, in particular, of the boat people that have been exploited and some of the people who died. But he's a really interesting character. We will look at him later in the book, but do look him up. Very interesting. Okay, so the next segment we get into is studying art, and we're going to talk about representationalism versus abstraction and non-objective. Now, these are important concepts. This particular statue we're looking at is Marcus Aurelius. This is a 2,000-year-old bronze here. I think 1,900 years old. At any rate, it's been sitting outside in Rome all this time, and look at what great condition it's in. It's amazing. There aren't a lot of Roman bronzes, partly because when the war ramped up somewhat after the Roman Empire fell, a lot of them were melted down. This is one of the few existing pieces that has remained in Rome. It was moved, but it wasn't in one or two places pretty much the whole 2,000 years, which is pretty impressive. What our book is showing us here is that this is a representational piece. Now, representational doesn't mean realistic, but in this case, this is a realistic, naturalistic. Those are two different terms, but in this case, both of those apply. Form. This is something that is made to look like life. Then we look at the opposite end of the spectrum, almost pretty much as a non-objective piece, but it still is a symbol of the infinity sort of figure eight on its side. But this is in the late 60s, Jose de Rivera, Infinity, and this is to do with history, and it's in front of the National Museum of American History in D.C. And it's a kinetic piece as well, but not to be confused. This is a very abstract, non-objective work. Non-objective work means that it doesn't describe an actual thing or a person or a landscape or anything like that. It's just the surfaces, and it's just the shapes in itself, and that's what the art is about. Mid-century, mid-20th century, we get into a lot of non-objective and abstract work. Two different things, though. Now, this is an abstract piece, but it also has, if we look closely, two representational, almost realistic, but I would say abstracted, still simplified forms of these two faces with Alan Hauser called Reverie. This area of the body, and the child's body even, is highly abstracted, right? We can still tell they're figures. It's a mother sort of holding a child on her lap. We can kind of get that, but it is abstracted, okay? Somewhat representational, but this is not non-objective. Non-objective would just be sort of like this form without the faces and not really referring to the body. This refers to the body, it refers to the figure, and so therefore it is abstracted, but it is not non-objective. Now look these terms up. They are in the back of your book, and they are also in the sides. The definitions are handy for you here. Okay,